Justice Democrats wrote a memo along with the Sunrise Movement, along with the New Deal strategies, entitled "What to Do When Republicans Block Biden." I'm going to guess that the Republicans are going to try and block Biden. So what should Biden do, or what should we do?
So the memo basically outlines several points, which is basically that, yes, Republicans will likely not deliver the 10 votes needed to pass things that Joe Biden wants to pass. And so what should Joe Biden do? Well, the first thing is that he should not water his priorities down and then invite Mitt Romney and Susan Collins into the White House for these long meetings over the series of weeks and months. President Obama, in his memoirs, even admits that all the meetings he had with Olympia Snowe and Chuck Grassley were a huge waste of time, that the last meeting he has with Chuck Grassley, President Obama says to Grassley, "What could I do to actually get you to support this bill?" And Grassley admits nothing. And that was something that Obama thought was the right thing to do for optics reasons. His advisors told him to do that. I think it would be a mistake for Joe Biden to, one, water down his priorities, and two, waste precious time by courting these Republicans through these PR stunts that don't really, don't win any favors for Democrats. The second thing is just we are under the impression that reconciliation is an okay step, but ending the filibuster is much more effective to getting the gains that Democrats want. The issue there is that there are many things that Democrats and progressives want to see, particularly on democracy reform, on things like immigration, that could potentially face hurdles through reconciliation that are not tax and spending issues alone.
Voting rights,
the
Voting Rights Act, like you say, immigration, et cetera.
Campaign finance reform, all these things. Like I know our friend Bernie Sanders is very passionate about reconciliation. There are some things that can be done through reconciliation, but we should not let Biden off the hook on the filibuster, and we should not let Chuck Schumer off the hook on ending the filibuster. And so,
or President Joe Manchin, for that matter, right?
And there is precedent for someone like Harry Reid saying he was against going nuclear and then going nuclear on something. And so people, especially in the Trump era, people have flipped their position on a number of things. And I think this is a key civil rights struggle, a key democracy reform struggle to allow the majority, the multiracial majority that elected Joe Biden to govern without 20 senators who represent 25% of the population, many of whom aided and abetted the insurrection that took place, to have a say in what Democrats do. And so that is a huge fight over the next several, 100 days, is to really push on that message. And, we also need to hold our allies, some of our progressive allies, to that too.
And just lastly, is that what is this a fight? Are we going to, if we're in May, let's say, and none of this has happened, is there a window when this stuff needs to happen? Is there a certain amount of time where it's like, okay, Biden needs to show that there's obstruction, or there needs to be an argument that they're being obstructed? What is the timing of all this? Because we should also say, obviously, there's very strong, obviously, policy arguments for this, but there's also very strong political arguments for this. It seems like the Biden administration understands that if they can't get a bunch of stuff done in the first year, and they got to go whole hog. There's no pick and choose which, agenda we're going to do. And once we get it in, we can ride it out. Because 2022 could go really bad, or it could go okay. It seems to me. And so, and I feel like the Biden administration knows that. But what, like in your mind, do you have a set number of days? We say 100 days because it's convenient, but do you have a set number of days? In fact, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I just want you to answer that question, and then we'll wrap things up with that. Quick break here. So before the break, Waleed, I was asking you, what is your timeline? When do you, is there a certain amount of days out where you're like, "Oy, this is not going to happen," or this needs to happen within this certain period of time?
I mean, I think he has this 100 days to deliver his agenda. And if he's unable to deliver many parts of his agenda within that 100 days, I think he's not, even the goals that Biden is setting for himself, he's not going to be able to achieve. I do want to judge Joe Biden for who Joe Biden is. And if his strategy, which seems like he wants to present something to Republicans, he wants to, provoke them to denying something that's popular like COVID relief. He does need to figure out, we cannot let this go on for several months because, when the average, median voter or whoever in some of these swing states in 2022, a lot of them will feel, oh, it's politics as usual. Both sides are to blame. They can't get along. And that's not what's happening. So Joe Biden really needs to take control of that narrative and paint the picture that it's actually a small minority of the country, population wise, that is obstructing really popular things from happening. And so I think also he has, if going into 2022, it would be a historic achievement if Democrats are up in the opinion polls going into 2022. It rarely happens in our country's history that the party of the president is beating the opposition party going into the midterm. So unless you're doing something on the level of the New Deal or the Great Society, which is what he is supposed to do in the next 9 months, that is really hard to achieve. And so that is what he needs to do.
Yep, I think that's a very good point. And I think there's a limited a shelf life on the bad taste that the Republicans and Donald Trump has left in the mouths of Americans. And I think he needs to capitalize on that. Waleed Shahid, Justice Democrats, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Waleed.
Thank you. Appreciate all your work.